That wasn't the worst case scenario. That storm shifts 20, 30 miles to the west, and it's a whole new ball game.
20 years ago, it was chaos, a catastrophe. This whole area was covered under water, sand, and debris.
2/3 of the country lives in counties protected by levees. Flooding can happen anywhere, even to you.
Together we faced two of the greatest disasters to ever strike this country. I will always remember the countless acts of courage from people all over Louisiana.
Don't be stuck on stupid. Get prepared.
This is a special edition of Sunday Journal, The Katrina Project. All this month, Sunday Journal is looking back at Katrina through the stories, memories, and new revelations about the hurricane that changed New Orleans and Louisiana forever. And now, here's the host of Sunday Journal, John Pastorek.
This garden and gallery tell the story of Katrina and the London Avenue Canal. It's calm and quiet now, but 20 years ago, it was chaos, a catastrophe. This whole area was covered under water, sand, and debris. Let's look back at the hurricane that changed New Orleans and Louisiana forever.
It was more like a movie scene. You think about movies, that type of stuff happens in movies.
But it wasn't a movie. It was Katrina. August 29, 2005, just after 6 a.m. The hurricane hit Buras, packing winds of up to 125 miles an hour. It appeared New Orleans had escaped the worst. But that afternoon, officials confirmed a breach at the 17th Street Canal. By the next day, 80% of the city was underwater.
I'm Barry Keim. I was the state climatologist during Hurricane Katrina and did extensive tracking of the storm. And I've since written a book called Hurricanes of the Gulf of Mexico that really chronicles the storm. And all the sand just
Katrina was personal for Barry Keim. His family home in St. Bernard Parish was swamped after Katrina hit.
My mom's house took on 9 feet of water in St. Bernard Parish. I mean, virtually every structure in the parish was devastated. Almost 80% of the metropolitan area underwater. I mean, it was completely transformational for the region. You see the eye.
He spent the last 20 years tracking the life-changing hurricane with us on Sunday Journal.
The eye is massive.
Oh, it's massive. It was about 40 miles across.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's about the size of Lake Pontchartrain.
Investigating and writing about the storm in his book.
Helicopters and boats began to provide firsthand accounts of the extent of the flooding, massive destruction of buildings, and dire straits of survivors on rooftops and elevated highway structures. And then right here is where the breach starts. And I guess it goes out all the way to Mirabeau. This is
visiting the Katrina zone and discovering new revelations about what exactly happened 20 years ago.
In fact, it might not even...
We're in a very interesting but infamous place. Tell us where we are.
Yeah, so we're at the site of a house that was destroyed due to the flood. We're at the London Avenue Canal. This is where the breach occurred. And in this particular location, the water basically went underneath the sheet pile here, completely undermined the levee system here, and the thing just collapsed. And as a result, you know, water from this canal just poured into this area. Now, the water in this canal got to about 9 feet above sea level. Where we're standing right now, we're probably about 4 feet below sea level. So think about that differential. And that water just poured and poured and poured into here. And the water at where we're standing right now probably got to about 2.5 to 3 feet above sea level. So the water would have been about at the top of my head, if to give you some idea of how deep it was. But when that water came through here, that was a raging torrent, and it just took out all the houses all around this area that we're looking at.
So if we would have been standing here 20 years ago when that was going on, we'd be swimming or we'd be dragged away by the current.
Yeah, the raging torrent would have sucked us down the street here. And we're standing here on the foundation of a house that was taken off of its foundation. So this is the original imprint, the footprint, if you will, of the house. And there are 3 bricks over here we may want to get a shot of later. Those were the original bricks from the original home.
Take us back and sort of tell us the meteorological story. Track Katrina for us 20 years later.
Well, the storm formed as a tropical low over the Bahamas, and that's where it started to grow, and the wind started to pick up, and then eventually it took some legs and started moving westward. It tracked over southern Florida as a Category 1 hurricane. And surprisingly, it did a lot of damage in Florida, even as a Category 1, because it was moving so slow. It just kind of wafted its way across the region. But due to the protracted exposure, it did lots of damage, across Miami and in the Everglades. And then it entered the Gulf of Mexico. And this is where all hell broke loose. It got out over what's called the loop current. And the eddies that were out there were so warm, the water was so hot, that the storm just exploded in intensity, very rapidly worked its way up to Category 5 strength, and was at Category 5 strength 18 hours before it made landfall in Louisiana. Now, it did weaken before it made landfall here, but it was already packing a Category 5 storm surge, and even though it made landfall as a Category 3, that Cat 5 surge still came in on the Mississippi coast, 28 feet above sea level. The highest storm surge ever measured in the Gulf of Mexico that in recorded history. And then the forecasting of the storm, by the way, as the storm was coming across Florida, the thinking was it would get into the Gulf and actually turn and make a landfall in the panhandle of Florida. So I remember, it made landfall on a Sunday. This is like the Thursday before. I was teaching class about weather and climate, and I'm like, hey, this is Florida's problem. I'll see y'all next Tuesday. Well, obviously that next Tuesday never really quite happened in terms of having class. But the storm, the forecasting kept shifting the storm further and further west, and then they locked on to the New Orleans area, and the rest is history.
When you walk this park today and you look back at that canal and think what happened here 20 years ago, what goes through your mind?
Well, I mean, it was a transformational moment for New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans was just going on its merry way, and life was great in the city, and then just all of a sudden, everything changed in an instant. I mean, in a matter of hours, the whole trajectory of the city had changed. And of course, that's initiated at these various locations where these levee breaches occurred. This is just one of several places where there were pinpricks in the levee and water got into this particular area.
And in St. Bernard Parish, that's where it becomes personal for you, because your family actually suffered some damage.
Yeah, the house I grew up in, my mother was still living in that house in Chalmette, and that house was built relatively high for the parish, but that's only a few feet above sea level. And despite that, she had 9 feet of water in the house, totally devastated. We had to take the house down to the studs and rebuild it.
Get more on the Katrina Project, along with special stories and series surrounding WBRZ's 70th anniversary at WBRZ.com.
You're watching Sunday Journal, reporting this morning from the London Avenue Canal in New Orleans. We'll be right back.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious multi-year reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered gold. Breck, your parks, our purpose.
At Murphy Law Firm, we've won just about every type of injury case you can think of. From dog bites, premise liability, auto, motorcycle, and truck crashes. We've won them all. Seriously injured? Call me, Attorney Peyton Murphy.
You know, an author once said, before you have the dog, you can't quite imagine what living with one might be like. And afterwards, you can't imagine living any other way. They don't know evil, jealousy, or hate. To sit with a dog on a glorious day is like heaven. Where doing nothing isn't boring, it's peaceful. When the right dog finds the right human, it's as if it always was and always will be. They protect each other, love each other, teach each other. More importantly, they never let the other down.
Watch the Storm Station this hurricane season, tracking the changing patterns and the tropics on air, online, or on the WBRZ weather app. Trust the Storm Station before, during, and after the storm.
Watch the Storm Station only on WBRZ.
Today, Katrina, 20 years later, and we're tracking the history, memories, and meteorology with the Katrina forecaster. We continue our conversation with Barry Keim. We're at a very infamous place. Tell us where we are and what was going on here 20 years ago.
So we're standing atop the levee on the London Avenue Canal, and this is literally where the levee was breached. So the water inside this levee system to my right became 9 feet higher than what the normal sea level would be, its normal level. And all that extra weight and pressure of that water found its way through sand. We're on an old beach ridge called Pine Island that was here 5,000 years ago. That water found its way through the pore space in that sand underneath the sheet pile, probably 30 feet below the surface, and worked its way up to the other side of the levee system and bubbled up on the outside of the levee, and that completely compromised the foundation underneath this levee system that we're standing on right now. And this whole levee system just gave way as the foundation was compromised, and the levee collapsed, and the water just rushed into this particular area. So the water was about 9 feet above sea level inside the canal, which reflected what was going on in Lake Pontchartrain behind us. And the land here is about 4 to 5 feet below sea level. So with the water 9 feet above and the land 4 feet below, the water just flowed in here like a raging torrent, taking these houses off of their foundations and eventually just filling the water up, filling the whole neighborhood up, if you will, like a bathtub. And what happened, though, the water in here is 9 feet above sea level. We're below sea level there, and we got these series of pinpricks in the levee. We went here, we got the 17th Street Canal, we got leaks or breaches, if you will, on the industrial canal, and the water is gradually, pouring in, and the water level is filling up while the storm surge is going down. So we got New Orleans filling up with the storm surge coming down, and they equalized, if you will, at about 2.5 to 3 feet above sea level, and then they went down together. Okay, so the water got to about 2.5 to 3 feet above sea level in this area. Keeping in mind, that's 4 to 5 feet below sea level, so that puts like 6, 7, 8 feet of water in most of these houses that you see around here.
And we just hiked a little while ago to get a perspective where we could look at the canal today and talk about what it looks like today, and that's normal. Yeah,
well, as we looked out over the canal, you see what the water level is. This canal is connected to the north into Lake Pontchartrain. So the water level here reflects what's going on in Lake Pontchartrain, which is roughly about sea level. And so what we were looking at is what it looked like, way prior to any effects of Hurricane Katrina. As Katrina starts marching its way through the Gulf of Mexico, and with southeast winds, it starts pushing water into Lake Bourne, which eventually gets into Lake Pontchartrain, and then of course the winds are moving it around Lake Pontchartrain. But eventually it pushed the biggest surge up against the walls here, which then propagates down the canals at a certain point after the storm kind of had passed, or as the storm was passing. And we get water levels in here 9 feet higher than what the sea level is, so 9 feet higher than what you see when we're looking out over there, which again probably takes the water level somewhere on this wall, but not to the top. But again, water went underneath and at this particular location.
And when you look at it today, it's so calm and peaceful. We have a beautiful day where we're doing this interview, but 20 years ago when that was happening, the houses were islands, houses were pushed off of their foundations. It was just total chaos and destruction.
Hard to imagine, given how peaceful and calm and tranquil and beautiful it is out here right now as we're conducting this interview. But again, 20 years ago, it was a very different scenario. Completely socked in with clouds, raining like crazy, and of course a raging torrent of water just flowing into this area, just wreaking havoc across this particular neighborhood.
And Barry, 20 years later, people have come back. They're still rebuilding along this canal, but there's every reason to believe. Are these canals been fortified to even withstand even stronger currents like that?
Well, the canals themselves, they're very much the same as what they were during Katrina. The difference, the main difference, and this is a big difference, is they put gates out on Lake Pontchartrain. So when there's a big surge in the lake, no longer will that surge in the lake then propagate down these canals into the middle of New Orleans. They'll seal those gates off, and they'll keep these at the current sea level and let Lake Pontchartrain do its thing, and that water will no longer propagate down here. So these levees, which are all what we call eye wall construction, which are not the best construction, the most sturdy, but we shouldn't see the big rises in water levels in these canals any longer.
Have they been put to the test since Katrina?
They've had some small tests. I mean, we've had some hurricanes, Isaac and Gustav, and you know, of course, Francine more recently, but nothing like Katrina levels.
I got to ask you, as we've been walking along here today, 20 years later, how do you react? What goes through your mind?
Well, there's a lot going through my mind. Again, the whole transformation of the city. You know, it's like life flashing before your eyes, right? It's there's so much to comprehend, and the resilience of the community and lessons learned. Hopefully, you know, the government is in much better shape, and the chain of command is much better understood. So all that stuff goes through my head because this is all so political. But yet, it's such a big piece of what New Orleans actually is.
When you came here today, and I know you've been here and you brought classes here and all that, when you see this area today, would you rebuild here? Would you live here?
Well, I do live here. I don't live in this neighborhood specifically. I'm not real fond of living below sea level, which is where I thought some of the zoning could have done a lot. I live in Old Metairie up on the Metairie Ridge, so the street in front of my house is 5 feet above sea level, so I'm pretty good with that. There are safe places to live in New Orleans, and I mean, otherwise you're just betting that these levees are going to hold again for the next time, and I mean, it holds most of the time, but not every time.
I guess it gets back to what you say in your book all the time, this, and then if you live along the coast, it's the price you pay for living in Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously people who live in New Orleans, for the most part, love New Orleans. It's in their DNA, and they just have to be here. And there's just something about these communities that make up this Gulf Coast area. They're so tight-knit, and people just love all the positives that these areas bring, and you just put up with the negatives and hope it doesn't happen to you. Come back. Love it.
Coming up, the recovery, renewal, and lessons learned from Katrina. That's next. For more on the Katrina Project and other special stories and programs celebrating WBRZ's 70th anniversary, visit WBRZ.com.
You're watching Sunday Journal, reporting this morning in New Orleans. We'll be right back.
Let's go inside the weather with Storm Station meteorologist Dr. Josh Eaches.
Various reports suggest that more dogs run away on 4th of July weekend than any other time of the year. No, these dogs are not celebrating their freedom. More than likely, they're afraid and confused by the sights and sounds. If your dog is afraid of thunderstorms, chances are they aren't big fans of the 4th either. With sensitive hearing, many dogs are afraid of loud noises. Here are some recommendations from the American Kennel Club that may calm your pooch on Independence Day. Create a safe, comforting indoor space for your dog. Play soothing sounds. Exercise your dog before fireworks begin. Close up windows and reward calm behavior from your dog. Finally, a reminder to make sure your dog is properly licensed and tagged to avoid a 4th of July separation. A reminder to take care of your furry family members these dog days of summer.
Scan for more Inside the Weather, sponsored by Energy.
Kyle just made a decision that would change his whole world.
Hey, you're sober? You drive.
Kyle just made a decision that would change his whole world. Drive sober or get pulled over.
I'm Sylvia Witherspoon. Join me Friday nights at 10 p.m. on WBRZ as I share the stories of people in our community making a difference for the better. To Make a Difference highlights the positive impacts occurring in and around the Baton Rouge community.
Here at Dudley DeBosier, we celebrate difference makers, which is why we partnered with To Make a Difference.
Join me Friday nights at 10 on WBRZ as I share more of these amazing stories.
Proudly sponsored by Dudley DeBosier Injury Attorneys.
Right here is where the breach starts. And I guess it goes out all the way to Mirabou. That land is probably 4 feet below sea level, and the water got up to 9 feet above sea level. So the water was 15 feet higher than what you're seeing there. It looks probably a lot like it looked prior to Katrina coming through.
Today, the Katrina forecaster. We continue our conversation with Barry Kahn. God, when you think 20 years ago, that Louisiana went through that. God, just 20 years, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's still places within the city untouched. And like I said, it's a different city now than it was before. I mean, like I said, all that changed in an instant. So, you know, lots of monumental change across this area. The demographics have changed, redistribution of the population across the whole area. It just turned this place upside down.
Yeah, and we've driven around this area, and you can see a lot of new homes that have been built here. Looks like a lot of recovery and renovation work. Where are we 20 years later?
Well, we still have a long way to go, I'll say that, but we've made some progress. It's amazing we haven't made more. I would argue we had a golden opportunity to kind of rezone the city, but that got very political and complicated. And we basically just rebuilt the city almost exactly the way it was before, which, again, I think we really fumbled a chance to do something really great with the city that could have worked for everybody. But nevertheless, here we are. We've learned a lot of lessons, and some of those lessons are we know what can happen. And keep in mind, Katrina wasn't even the worst case scenario for New Orleans. I mean, it's hard to imagine it being any worse, but it could have been a whole lot worse. Had the storm tracked, 15, 20 miles further toward the west, it would have been more devastating for the city. The surge levels would have been even higher, and even more of the city would have been flooded. The sliver by the river, the high area along the Mississippi River, even some of those areas could have flooded. So. We did learn about the levee systems. Every weak link that we had in our defense system got exposed in a major way. We made major fixes. Some of those fixes include putting gates on the Lake Pontchartrain, on all these canals that permeate into the city. We have gates at the Lake Pontchartrain so that storm surge can't penetrate deep into the city. So where we're standing here, the Lake Pontchartrain is not going to flow down into this area and create water 9 feet above sea level like we had 20 years ago. So we put a lot of fixes in. I think we're in much better shape today than we were 20 years ago, but it still could happen.
And there are reminders like this all around New Orleans. And when you come here, when people come here, what do they need to learn from this to make us better prepared for the next Katrina?
Well, obviously, the fact that it happened tells you that it can happen again. And that's where I think we just need to wrap our heads around that, do the best we can to fortify all these weak links that were exposed, and learn a lot about the engineering, the eye walls versus T walls. We have a lot of eye wall structures which are very vulnerable in these kinds of situations, and T-wall structures are much more, much sturdier, if you will, and can withstand things like that. So I know there some fixes have been put in, better maintenance on the levee systems. A lot of them were just kind of put up and then ignored for long periods of time. I think these are much better maintained now than they were when Katrina hit.
What do you think? What about on the state level? Because after Katrina came Rita, and then for Baton Rouge, Gustav, which many called Baton Rouge's Katrina. What about the state level? Is Louisiana better prepared?
Oh, absolutely. We've learned a lot of lessons. Evacuations are much better now than they were back then. Things of that nature. We learned a lot from the mistakes of the early 2000s and those major hurricanes that have hit this area, and we've seen some evidence of that in some recent storms, and how they've handled certain things and getting people out of harm's way. Now, fortunately, we haven't had anything quite as catastrophic as a Katrina or a Rita, but we did have Laura, and Laura was a whole nother animal that affected Lake Charles. But again, we've learned a lot about evacuations and how to get people off the coast, and of course the politics. There was a lot of oddities that happened during Katrina, that I think a lot of that has been exposed, and hopefully we have that taken care of moving forward.
You're not only a historian and a meteorologist, you're also a teacher. I mean, you've taught classes, and you've actually brought your classes to these places, these infamous places in New Orleans and around Louisiana that have experienced hurricane chaos and damage. What do you want future generations to learn from something like this?
Yeah, so when I bring my students here, I want them to understand the whole hydrological vulnerability of the city and the broader region, you know, because we have issues all across South Louisiana. It rains like crazy. We get hurricanes. We get everything thrown at us. You know, the whole kitchen sink really gets thrown at us in a typical year. So I really want the students to sort of wrap their heads around what those vulnerabilities are, so that we can be better prepared moving forward.
Well, now 20 years later, what do you see coming down the pike 20 years from now? You know, 20 years from now, we'll be talking about another Katrina or something else.
Of course, there will be another Katrina. I mean, the storms are just going to keep coming. Now, you know, whether we get another one in the next 20 years, I mean, it's anybody's guess. I mean, we could get one this coming season. We may not see another one like Katrina for 100 years. So, you know, every year basically has the same probability. So let's just hope we're better prepared. I think we will be. My best guess is that, by the way, if a Katrina occurred today, that same storm, we would probably only have minor flooding across the New Orleans metropolitan area. Mississippi coast, that's a whole nother thing, coping with a 28-foot storm surge, but there would probably only be minor flooding here in New Orleans. But, like I said, that wasn't the worst-case scenario. That storm shifts 20, 30 miles to the west, and it's a whole new ballgame.
In this memorial park, there's a memorial back there, and I believe it's entitled Unity, kind of showing the people that came together to persevere and recover from Katrina. In terms of unity, you know, there is a bad side to a hurricane, but what did you see in terms of unity and maybe how it brought Louisianians together?
Yeah, I mean, these catastrophic situations do brings out the worst in some people, a few. But the vast majority of people, it brings out the absolute best in them. And I mean, if you just look around, the recovery in this area has been incredible. Lots of new construction, people taking care of their lawns. The place looks fantastic. And to put up a memorial like this is, you know, I just think very appropriate. And everybody's kind of rallying around the fact that we're all in this together, and we do need to take care of each other.
Well, Barry, it's always great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
On this infamous anniversary, the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
Hopefully we won't have another one anytime soon.
20 years later, there are still many reminders of Katrina in New Orleans, like this house on Warrington Drive in Gentilly. They call it the Flooded House Museum. Walk through it and you still hear the ghost.
Next time on the Katrina Project, we'll take you inside for an exclusive look at a relic of recovery in Katrina legend and lore, the Flooded House Museum.
This wasn't a disaster. It was a bona fide catastrophe.
Get more on the Katrina Project, along with special stories and series surrounding WBRZ's 70th anniversary at WBRZ.com.
Rise, heal, come back. Katrina taught us many lessons, especially get educated, get prepared, get a game plan, because it only takes one storm that could be another Katrina. I'm John Pastorek, reporting in New Orleans.